All right, so we want to really be cognizant of your time, and we want to welcome you to this webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and share a few of the poll. I'm going to go ahead and end it and share it with you guys. So it looks like we have 45% of you that say yes, you're using the new COE. 55% say no. 69% say yes, you're aware that the COE was updated. 31% say no. 14% say this is your first webinar with IDRC, and 86% say no. And I know my years for how long you've been with MEP, it was like, who's been here 3 years and under, 35%, and who's been here 4 years and up, 65%. So that wouldn't let me do more categories right there. So just to give you a little bit of idea, it looks like we have a mixed bag as far as people that are aware of the new COE. For some of you, it may be totally new. I don't feel like this is going to be a groundbreaking webinar or anything. It's just going to hopefully be informative to give you information about what's going on. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Castaneda. I work as the project coordinator for IDRC, and IDRC has 32 member states. So a shout out to all of our states, but we also provide training for all states because we feel like we're all in the same boat together. And the more informed we all are, the more chance we are able to find the kids that need this program and hopefully make the difference that we need to in their lives. So our focus, like I said, is on the new COE changes. I think it might have been even better, way better if OME was here. We did ask them, they were not available. So we've gotten a lot of questions about the COE. So we're going to borrow from their slides. They did send it and say, hey, you can use these slides with a few additions of some things that we had of note. And so we will record this. If you registered, all of you guys, you'll get an email with all of the presentation, and we'll have the recording on our YouTube page. And so we'll share that with you. So which states are already using this new COE? If you want to put in the chat box which states are, because it might be helpful for someone to know, hey, the state next to me is using this. I think it could be really beneficial. So if you are using the new COE, if it's already in use, if you'll say yes, our state is, and go ahead and put that in the chat box if you'd be willing to share that. So it looks like Indiana is, Pennsylvania is, Texas is, Arizona. I'm just going to watch this. Tennessee is, Iowa, yes, Massachusetts. So that'll give you an idea of if you're wondering how they implemented or did any of the changes, you can definitely reach out to your peers. Okay, so where can you find the new COE? So it's on the results page. And let me just go ahead and share my screen so you can see that. And I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat box in case anyone has not seen this. And we'll just drop that in there for you. So if you're not familiar with the results page, there is a bunch of information out there that can be really helpful for the program. And if you scroll down to the National Certificate of Eligibility, you can then see some information about there. And then there's the actual Word document and a PDF document that has the COE instructions and also has the actual COE itself. So if you have a comment, I notice people raise your hand. We won't answer your raised hands. You'll need to put your comment into the chat box and we'll pay attention to that. Okay, so you can download it right there as you need to. Okay. So I think I would just like to say it's really important that you read the instructions too. Sometimes people have the COE, but they've never read the instructions. The instructions give some really good information on, how to fill it out. Super helpful for new recruiters for you to be able to see. So we're going to talk about the different changes. We've done a little highlights here. We're not going to spend a lot on this. The COE looks very similar. There's just some new things in there. And so these slides that I'm going to present right now came from slides that were presented at the Recruiter Invitational, with a little bit more information of a few things that we've gotten questions about. So there are adjustments that have been made to the COE. As you can see, it's going to look pretty similar to what it was before with just a few changes. And so we're just going to be discussing those changes today. And I feel like there's just a few of them. So we usually run our webinars for an hour. And so what we'll do today is cover this and then let you ask questions. But if we get done early, then you get some more minutes back to your life. So it says recent changes to the national COE. Number one, there were addition of 2 options to the child sex field. And in addition to those 2 options, there is an other and a no response. So what I'm going to do is just kind of read what they provided. It says record in the instructions, record the child sex, male, female, or other. States may abbreviate these responses as M, F, or O. If no child sex information is provided, write a dash or an NA. So that is, the field itself still looks the same, but you know your response there could be a little bit different. The next would be the addition of parent guardian email address in the family data section. Hopefully that'll be helpful for, you know, to be able to keep, not all of our families, of course, have email address, but since COVID, a lot more of them do. So in that family section, you're going to see, you know, parent guardian 1, parent guardian 2, and then parent guardian 1 email, parent guardian 1 telephone, parent guardian 2 email address, parent guardian 2 telephone. So you'll see that addition right there, pretty straightforward. It says another change was addition of a required comment if the COE does not have an interviewee signature. See the COE instructions, page 12, and we'll refer back to that. So on the interview signature, the recruiter interview did not obtain the interviewee's signature. The comment must explain the circumstances that prevented the recruiter from obtaining the signature. For example, the interview was conducted remotely. Interviewee refused to sign his or her name. So there has to be an explanation if you do not obtain that signature. It says here, addition of fields for printed names in the interviewee signature and eligibility certification sections. So before you could just write the signature, but then sometimes it's really hard to read the signature. So you have the signature, relationship to the child, printed name. So most of us are used to this kind of thing on forms. You know, I may write my signature and you couldn't really read it. Then you'll put, you know, Jessica Castaneda or whatever the name is and the date. Same thing for the signature of the interviewer and the signature of the designated SEA reviewer. And so you have that printed name, and then the date. So like I said, these are pretty straightforward. These are not really big changes. There are things that can easily be incorporated and added. And for those of you that are MIS 2000 states, it's good to note that some of these changes have already been done in other states. So it should be a pretty easy switch for most states to be able to have that. If you're not an MIS 2000, of course, you would do your own internal. So it says if a state chooses to include other statements that require, for example, a parent guardian signature. So this was one of our additions to the slides. This was not on the OME slides. This is just something that we've seen, we've had questions about. Let's say on the national COE, you want to add some more information, and maybe you want signatures for parents for something else. And it says here, if a state chooses to include other statements that require, for example, a parent guardian signature, specifically, the state can include those statements separately from the interviewee signature section. As noted on page 2 of the instructions, state-specific required requested information may be placed anywhere on the COE except inside any of the required data sections. So Ed strongly recommends that states obtain the approval of their legal counsel to ensure that the additional statements comply with federal, state, and local laws. So it says that the printed name have to match the family section 1 of the COE. I imagine that whoever is, signing it, one of the reasons you might have to put a different comment is maybe you got different information maybe you got the information from the aunt, for her sister, who's the mother of the kids or something. You would need to provide, I'm sure, a comment if it wasn't the same. Okay, so here is probably one of the bigger changes. There is a reorder of the items in the qualifying moves and work section. So the qualifying arrival date appears last. So you can see you're going to go through first the children listed on this form, move due to economic necessity from residents in, from one district to this other one. The children move, these are still the same as the worker with the worker, as the name of the worker, and is it the child or the child's parent guardian. Then you still have the worker move from economic necessity from a residence. You still have these same things. But down here at the bottom, you have the children's qualifying arrival date down towards the bottom. Let me check and see if there's any other comments that we have. No, not yet. Okay, so here it is kind of in big, large font, so you can be able to see it. So you're going to have this, you're going to get through all of this, and at the bottom, you're going to have this qualifying arrival date there at the bottom. So not huge differences. This is one that I think we've had some questions about. It says there was an addition of explanatory language regarding recent history of moves for qualifying work. So see COE instructions, page 9. So this is where we're saying refer back to the instructions. So I asked specifically, there's a question about residency dates. So if you look at the COE, you can see, let me go back to where that is. Let me see if I put that right in the beginning. Sorry, scrolling back through. The residency date is earlier on. Sorry, now I'm making you all crazy. See if I can find my COE. There it is. So the residency date belongs in this section over here. So it's not down over here. So we'll go back through the slides here and hopefully not make you crazy. So it says, this is an explanation of explore. So they added this in the COE instructions, explanation of explanatory language regarding recent history of moves for qualifying work. So you can see this information on page 9 of the COE instructions. It says, an individual's recent history of moves for qualifying work does not have to be from one school district to another. An engagement in qualifying work that follows the historic move does not have to occur soon after each move. However, any such historic move must meet the definition of a move, and then it cites right there, which requires a change from one residence to another residence that occurs due to economic necessity. So if you're thinking those soon after moves would have had to cross school district boundaries or had to get the job right after, the recent history of moves, it doesn't, in that particular thing, they're just saying those recent history of moves did not have to be from one school district to another. So it could be from, in the same district, just moving from another place to place. And engagement in qualifying work that follows the historic moves does not have to occur soon after each move. So they just added extra clarification right there regarding recent history of moves in the COE instructions. So here's where it kind of mentioned in the actual, I just copied this from the instructions where it's giving you what to do about recent history of moves. And it says, mark this box, if this, and then it kind of explains it at the bottom. This is where that little section comes from. Okay, so we just had a few questions. Some people said, I didn't realize, I thought it had to be across school district lines or have to, so they just clarified that in there in case anybody had questions. So they also said they had a revision of language to clarify the addition of comments for specific circumstances. So I know in our national assessment, we ask often when are comments needed on the COE, and sometimes these are things that recruiters get wrong because you do need to see those in the instructions of the COE. And so it says, Ed recommends that the recruiter provide additional comments on the COE in the following circumstances and in any circumstances in which a third party may question the eligibility determination. And then in that, this is what they said. They said that COE comments, the information on the COE needs additional explanation to be clearly understood. You would need a comment if you needed an additional explanation that basically an independent outside reviewer would need to understand. Or the basis for preliminary eligibility determination is not obvious. For example, the work is unusual enough that an independent reviewer is unlikely to understand that it's qualifying work. We just worked with a state recently and they were looking at crickets. And so there's a whole thing under results.gov of where someone had reached out to the OME and said, would work in crickets qualify? And so they went through and explained when it would and wouldn't. So something like that might be, needed a comment to explain. It says an explanation is needed to enable a reviewer to understand how the preliminary eligibility determination was made. The other one would be work that could be part of a series of activities. I think we've all heard this one before, that viewed together could constitute year-round employment, such as mending fences on a dairy farm, baling hay, etc. A few more things. The work could be viewed by an independent reviewer as either temporary or year-round employment. A move is of such brief duration that one could question whether it was a move from one residence to another due to economic necessity, or the person who provided the information on the COE is not the worker. And then this was one, the mailing address is different from the children's physical residence. Or I think in the comment that was questioned, like what happens if it's a different name? This one specifically says if the children's legal parent or guardian is different from the current parent and guardian listed. So you might need to do that too. So they have all the information there on that results page. It's pretty straightforward. And this may be the shortest webinar ever, but what questions or comments that you guys have? I mean, that's the basic information as far as the COE. So I'm going to actually I'm going to stop recording.